Hello, everybody. Hello, Karla Kerr. I'm so thrilled to be here today with you, Karla Kerr, holistic funeral director and friend. Welcome, Karla.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so happy to be here.
So here we are. The Living Resource Project is a compassionate communities project that serves to remind us that we all have what it takes to support the living and the dying among us, and that we also need each other for this journey of life through death. To bless our conversation, I would like to invite you into a 3-candle blessing to get started. The first candle I'm going to light is for all past beings. This can be human beings, our ancestors, ancestors. This can be more than human beings. This first candle is to honor all past beings. And the second candle I'm about to light is to honor all present beings. So all beings that are here on this planet at this time. Again, this can be human beings and or more than human beings. The second candle is to honor all current beings. And the third candle is to honor all future beings. All beings that have not arrived yet here in this place. Human beings, more than human beings. This third candle is to honor all future beings. And may the conversation that we have here today be for the benefit of all beings everywhere. May it be so. So, Karla, I'm so inspired by the work that you're doing in end-of-life care, and I would love to hear more about the services you offer. What are you up to? You're in Victoria, right? Victoria area?
Yes, I'm right in Victoria. I'm coming at this work from funeral service. So I like to think that I'm pretty practical in my approach. How I've shown up here is informed from what I see lacking when I meet with families immediately following a death. So the number one thing is helping families talk to each other because it can be so uncomfortable, especially when someone is ill. Because I think talking about death can kind of seem like you're giving up hope, or even the superstition that talking about it will make it happen sooner. So I find myself mostly where my passion around getting conversations started, creating that space. I think that there's a vibration to end of life, talking about end of life that can be really threatening and really uncomfortable. But being a calm and experienced and informed person in a stressful situation, in a situation where people are looking for guidance, again, I just try to create that space that can hold that energy without it feeling threatening and scary. And then on the practical, I just like to really be honest and accurate about even like post-death care, because I think that empowers folks to know where they have choices, where they have opportunity to slow down, and just to have a sense of what to expect. So those are my services basically.
Yeah, I really relate to what you just said there. I think that is just something that is so important, just being like offering that practical information because people cannot make informed decisions unless they know what the options are. And because we don't talk about death enough and what happens in many ways, but in this case, in the realm of work that you do, in your work as a funeral director, people just don't understand the options available. So they can't make informed decisions. And the decisions they're making are often at the hardest time in their life. And it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, so I find people are seeking me out at different points. I had a family last month who were looking for support. Woman was actively dying. She was in hospice. I met with the family in the room at hospice. And again, coming down to practical, like I'm all about practicalities. So listening to this woman, and one thing I did right off the bat is I sat right next to her. There was about 6 family members in the room. I sat right next to the woman and and met her, but also said, I'm going to sit here so you can hear my voice. But if you're getting exhausted and it's too much, just close your eyes. You can just listen. I'm going to speak next to you so you can hear me, but I'm going to, address your family. Because in this case, it was really about what's going to happen next. She was having a medically assisted death, and she had a lot of thoughts of how she wanted her post-death care to go, where she wanted to be buried, and details surrounding that. And it hadn't been a conversation she was really able to have with her loved ones because they weren't particularly ready to hear it. And I think having this neutral third party helped, even just being able to ask some direct questions that family members wouldn't want to ask, but needed to hear the answers to. The other thing that I'm getting more and more are people wanting to pre-plan, or, the term get their affairs in order, get their ducks in a row. I've recently teamed up with this amazing legal admin, Shelley Essery. We had met in the community, and just together, as soon as we met, it was like simpatico, like we've just been on the same page. And what I love about her is that even though she is steeped in the legal, she comes from a wills and estates background. She comes at it from a heart-centered approach. So asking her questions and hearing her information is not dull and boring. She's just good at explaining, and she's very much about the why. Why do we do the things that we should do? Not just you need to have a will, you need to do this. It's more so like why you might want to do that and what the benefits are. We're super not doom and gloom. We're not worst case scenarios, but again, just like why this is in your benefit. So we call our business the Empowered Estate because we are all about empowering people. And the resource we've developed is in a binder format. It houses absolutely everything from, your vital stats to your testamentary documents to your bank accounts, financials, passwords, as well as end of life planning, values, how you'd like to be cared for in your end of life, and then beyond into death care, into your wishes around your final disposition, memorialization, and then legacy as well. So lots of prompts for things that would be really great for your family to know and to hold on to. I looked through so many resources in my doula practice to come up with something. What can I use with families to help them get their information documented? And I couldn't find anything that I loved, that was my style, that felt effective for how I want to work. And I didn't want to create it myself because that's a lot of work. And then meeting Shelley, like we were just able to create something together, sharing the load. It's just that collaboration, that community, the energy was there. And one thing that really makes this resource different is Shelley and her husband have an engraving business. So they have a laser engraver. And so the binder itself is engravable. And what's really special about that is you can totally personalize it with your name, with maybe a love note for your family or a piece of advice, with an image if hummingbirds are important to you, or daffodils. I've got my colleague Laura has one with it. Hers has a Celtic knot on it, which is important to her heritage. We've done some amazing personalized binders, which the idea, how we envisioned this right from the start, was almost like a family Bible. Like, let this be this family, like, host of information and history that can be passed down through the generations. So I'm very proud of this because now when I have people approach me who are either maybe they're in their retirement years, but active, just kind of wanting to get things squared away, this is a perfect resource. We also do ongoing accountability parties, we call it, to
That is
keep
so important.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I have seen so many half-filled in checklists that people get from the lawyer's office, from their financial planner, and we're like, this is not collecting dust. We don't want this collecting dust. How do we do this? And I think it is through accountability. Like, join our family.
Validity.
We've got a nice network now of people who have our binder. It's fantastic. So it's great to have this now that when somebody comes to me, they want to get their affairs together, I have a vehicle for them to use. We also are starting to get a lot of people who will be executors. So they know they're going to be on the hook for helping mom and dad or helping their aunt or whatever, and they don't know where to look.
Mhm.
And conversations are kind of falling flat. So now we're getting people who want to be the empowered executor. And so to have a way of delivering that, we do this through workshops. And so this can be like a whole family together. So yeah, that's my baby right now. That's where my love and attention is.
That's just so inspiring. And it's so wonderful that you two have met each other because as you were describing your partner, I thought that's exactly how I would describe you. That's what really inspires me and draws me to you because we do very different aspects of death care. You're very practical and pragmatic. And I love that about you, but you're equally heart-centered. Like just the way that you were describing your partner is exactly how I would describe you. So I'm really excited to get my hands on your binder. And I really think that it really is different from anything I've heard of the engraving aspect. And then having this community to have these parties with to make sure you're on track because boy, I have started advanced care planning with so many folks who just have such a hard time finishing. And, I'm curious if you relate to this, but I've come to really understand that it is really hard work. Like it is really hard work to really get down to the nitty-gritty details about your own mortality. It makes it real on a whole other level. And I think even people that want to do this work, that understand the importance of this work, how it can benefit them and having their wishes upheld, how it can benefit friends and family by taking the stress off their shoulders by wishes being explicitly stated and instructions being given. People that really get that still have a really hard time finishing because of this resistance. And I think there's a lot of grief work that happens as people move through this planning. And what I've come to learn as a doula is this idea of holding space for emotions to come up that is so commonly associated with the bedside or, these tender conversations. It's just as much a part of this practical planning. And I think as people supporting people in this planning, we need to be there as a compassionate, heart-centered companion because it brings up so much this anticipatory grief or this worry about what will happen to my people when this happens. So I love your heart-centered approach. I love your practical approach, and I love the community you're building around this project. It's awesome.
Thank you
Awesome.
so much. Yes, this it truly, our focus has been let this be a love, an expression of love for your family, for your loved ones. It's not boring. It is a bit daunting. We've made it in a binder. In the one of the features is that just take a couple pages out at a time. Don't look at the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's thick, but if you just take out 2 pages at a time, that makes it doable. It's very customizable that way.
So Karla, I'm curious, can you tell me a little bit about the path that led you to this work that you do today?
Yeah, of course. I get asked this a lot because it's the role, like vocation of funeral director is not particularly common. And to come at it just honestly and or like organically, not be born into it, is a little bit unusual. I had an experience as a young person. A girl at my school died at 13 years old, and it ignited this passion in me. I was so curious about where's her body? Like, talk about practical. I was like, where is her body? What happens now? And it ignited something in me then that I followed through with. I volunteered at a funeral home a few years later. I ended up pursuing funeral service because that's the role in our society that handles death. I was so fortunate. I grew up here on Vancouver Island, but I moved to Alberta for about 7 years and lived in a small town. And what I witnessed there was this community involvement. And Tracy, I think you and I have chatted about this a little bit before because we have a similar link to this particular small town. And what I witnessed there that I had never seen and have never seen since was this understanding that the community has about what to do when a death occurs. There is a lot, I mean, religion played a part in this. A lot of people are churchgoers there, so the church family just steps in. But also, a lot of people have funerals and they call them funerals. And why I think that is significant, and again, didn't realize any of this until I came back and had something to compare it to. But a funeral, and especially when there's burial and you're watching the body go into the earth, there is something that can't be denied. It's very physical, it's very visceral. You're watching that returning to the earth. The funeral itself is generally held within a week or so. And so people are in fresh grief, and they also are still in that period of trying to accept that this is real. What I started to see once I came home was much more of a disconnect. So we have the highest cremation rate in Canada. It's in the high 90s. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't have very much space. Cremation is a lot less expensive. And what comes with that, though, is the ability to have a disconnect. Many families do not, we don't really need to see the body after death. In fact, you may not see the body until here's your tidy little box of cremated remains a week later. I also experience here a replacement of the word funeral with celebration of life. I think the celebration of life is important. It's lovely. However, sometimes it's weeks or months later. And I think what we're missing is that very real and solemn acknowledgement that a life has ended, a body has stopped living. Many families don't want to be involved with the dead body. And I'm not somebody that's going to push that as something that you need to do. However, I think we've kind of like the pendulum has swung so far to the other side where there's a real avoidance in anything to do with the dead body. And what I felt in stark contrast coming from small town Alberta to back to Vancouver Island was, instead of feeling like I was facilitating a sacred and an important life milestone in community, I now feel as though I am just facilitating basically a disposition of the body as quickly and efficiently as possible. I am not often involved with the celebration of life or a funeral afterwards. It's a lot more of just the kind of like, let's get the cremation done, and the family may or may not do their own thing. So I've had a hard time in funeral service for that reason. I didn't realize what I had in Alberta or what I was experiencing in Alberta until I had something to compare it to, and I felt something was missing here. And that's one of the reasons I pursued the death doula training with you, Tracy, is because I wanted to find out how I could show up in a more holistic way. And becoming a death doula has made me a better funeral director. I slow down. I check in first where families are at. How are they landing with me? Like, where are they coming from? Are they coming straight from the hospital? Have they had a couple of days to process? What was the death like? What's their understanding of what we're going to do here together? Do they even know what their loved one's wishes are? Are they coming in kind of expressing their loved one's wishes with a sense of we know what to do? Or are they like completely lost? So I take the time now to check in where they're at, and I also explain what we're going to do together and why, and where there are options to slow down and where the choices are. I've been fortunate in that I work for a funeral home that is very low pressure and very human. It's family owned, and there's we often go see folks in their homes. I get to go make funeral arrangements in people's homes, which is such a different feeling than having a freshly grieving family come into a funeral home. It feels different. But I would say being able to show up in a much more human and authentic way helps me with my work. I enjoy it more. I feel like I'm making more of a difference and serving the community in a more effective way.
That's so inspiring. Thanks for sharing about how your curiosity around death, which is really curiosity around life, has
Mhm.
led you to where you are right now and the offerings that you give. Thank you. So I'm wondering, Karla, do you have a story you can share with us about the work that you do? Maybe it's a story about a client or a situation that somehow surprised you or changed you, your understanding of the end of life journey.
Depends how much time you have. I've got lots of questions. I've got lots of stories. Um, you know, so one of the first things that comes to mind was this girl that I met. She was about my age, and we were making funeral arrangements for her dad. And she had this question for me, and she was so nervous to ask because she felt like it was weird. And finally, she gets it out and she asked if she could dress her dad.
Mm.
And I said, yes, of course. And I felt a little bit sad that she felt it was so weird. It was so hard to ask, but in honesty, it's a very unusual question I get asked. And I was so glad she did. So I prepared him and washed him, shaved his face, got him in his undies, and she came in with his clothes. And I kind of just assisted her in dressing him in his favorite outfit, which was a white t-shirt, some well-worn sweatpants, and his slippers. And what always has stuck with me is that she came into that room kind of like with her shoulders up to here. Like she came in nervous. And we probably spent 45 minutes together. And I think we were kind of giggling too. Like it was not all somber or quiet. Like we're chatting. And when she left, she was relaxed and maybe not happy, but she got to do something to take care of her dad. Another family that I was able to serve, which was more of a home funeral. The woman was dying at home, and the family had lots of questions about how this was going to happen. So I came over, I met the woman she was on death's door. Like she looked more like a skeleton than a human being, a living human. Her eyes were kind of half open and unfocused, breathing kind of uneven. And I sat with her for a bit. And this was my first experience of being with somebody dying. And I was a little bit like, oh, like I don't know if I'm prepared for this. But the words of Barbara Carnes came to me, and that was I just said to her, Sharon, you're dying. Your body is shutting down, and it's doing exactly what it knows how to do, and that's okay. Just relax, float like a leaf on a stream, follow the current. And I knew she had been close with her grandmother. Grandmother had raised her. And so I said, do you see your grandmother there? Your grandmother's there. You can ask for her. She'll help you across. And I'm like, I don't know if anything I'm saying is right. It's just like, I don't know. Um, so I went and visited the family for a bit. They asked a whole bunch of questions, practicalities. One was like, what if she dies in the night? What do we do? Relax, hop into bed if you want. Like, you can finally touch her without causing pain. She'd been in so much pain. They couldn't even, like, softly touch her to clean her. She was in so much pain. You can hop into bed now. You can finally touch her, make a cup of tea, have a snack, have a nap. There is no emergency here. Call me in the morning. She died the next day, and I came back and helped the family with, we washed her. Her friend did this beautiful blessing, shrouded her in her grandmother's tablecloth, and which was kind of symbolic of like being wrapped in her grandmother's arms. And the family got to work. The men went out and they chopped wood and they lit a fire and they got candles going and music, and we made some snacks, and at some point sat down and had tea, and we're visiting. And meanwhile, Sharon's lying there on the stretcher like 5 feet away. And I think that there is like a primal acceptance of death when you sit with a corpse, because you truly see that it has not breathed, it hasn't moved in hours, like minutes to hours. And we sat and had tea. And when I think back to that, I remember her sisters, feet up on the table, reclined back, laughing at a memory of her sister. And I was with them for probably, I don't know, 5 hours or so. And we met a week later. Sharon was buried, green burial, and we met at the cemetery, and they carried her. They pallbeared right from the hearse to the grave. So this family had hands on their person pretty much every step of the way. And it's always stuck with me because I feel like I wish I saw that more. It was so unusual to me, but also so like, this feels like how it should be, you know?
Like we're remembering something that's too important to forget.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
What a beautiful story. Thank you so much for both the stories, and that last one that I think really speaks. I mean, there's so much in that story, but what's really rising to the top for me is how simple it is to engage in personal, meaningful ritual, which is simply doing something in action with intention. And, just it doesn't have to be complicated. From your story, it sounds like you just things just slowed down and stretched out. And it's almost as though that gives people's internal time to catch up with the external timing of something so enormous as a person dying to catch up with and to align with. And I love all those little touch points for people to make meaning, do things their way, slow things down, and have something to do. And oh, it's a beautiful story, and I really hope that it serves to inspire people to step into, yeah, like have the permission to do things their way, and that it's not morbid or weird or sad. Like we care, well, it is sad, I'll take that back, but we care for our living so tenderly right up until the moment of death. And then there's this weird sort of sense that, okay, now they're dead. I can't touch them. I can't engage with them. I can't wash them. I can't. And I think that continuity is so healthy and so natural. And I love the work that you're doing. And yes, we need more of these stories.
Well, you're exactly right. Like, one thing that really ignited this holistic thing for me was I was working at a funeral home as a full-time embalmer. So I was just with the bodies, getting bodies ready for burial and cremation every day. Um, and there's a certain disconnect you have to have. Like, I can't be connecting with every single corpse. So there's a disconnect, and it's heavy work. Like, it's physically heavy work. Like, it is awkward and demanding, washing and dressing a corpse. And so here I was, like, disconnected at a time when I think there used to be more connection and sacredness and tending. And I thought, like, there are people right now, family members, friends, definitely, who would probably step in if given the chance and do this work. And maybe it would actually even help their grief. to be able to do something, a final way of caring. And to me, it was just like this stark, like this could be different. This could be different. And not every family wants to. The majority of families don't want to, and that's fine. And there will always be a role for funeral service. And some of the best people I've met in my life, I've met through funeral service that are funeral directors. But I think that there's a little bit of room to have some more engagement, and like you said, like not like challenge that fear that this is something that's bad or something that's unhealthy, or even that there's emergency, like somebody's died. We automatically, it's very natural to have that panic. Oh my gosh, we've got to call the ambulance, or got to call the funeral home, or what do we do, when really there's no emergency now. It's just taking that time.
Yes. It's funny. I just sent a message to a doula client yesterday. Her dad is just in the final stages and he's at North Shore Hospice. He's getting excellent care, but just feeling the need to, in advance, give her some options on what to do the moment after death. And, even before the body care, just letting people know, like you said, there's no need to call the funeral home or call 911 or get a nurse to come in. Like, just the need in that moment can look like pausing, can look like holding hands around the bed, can look like playing a song or talking about favorite memories. That slowing down, I think, is just so important. And I think just explaining to people that, you know, really listen into your own internal needs. What do you need? This is your time, and there's no do-overs. And how can you tend to your needs? I think it's really, really important, like you say, when the grief is so fresh, and to really allow that internal timing to catch up. And there's some beautiful, simple rituals people can do to just honor that feeling like things are complete. Something like taking the bed sheet when you really feel like you're ready to go, and just putting the bed sheet over the head of your
Mhm.
person. This, again, a ritual, an action with intention that just symbolizes, okay, I feel done and I'm going to do this now. I think this is really important information for people to have beforehand. But it kind of comes back to what we started talking about, is that it's not always easy to start these conversations. And even as an end of life doula supporting someone who is with their dying father, it almost felt premature to because I didn't, it's like I want her to have this information, but I also don't want to, you know, take her too far ahead so that she feels overwhelmed by what's about to happen. So it's this art, if you will, of sharing information tenderly and titrated so that people don't feel overwhelmed, but just this deep need to share information so people can make informed decisions.
Totally. And noticing where there is space and need for ritual and sacredness. Like, I think the reason why I mentioned earlier about the role of the church or that spiritual family is that having that kind of blueprint of what to do. And something that I witness sometimes now, for example, this has happened a few times around a graveside, where we're just having the graveside service. It's just the family, and we're just watching the person lowered into the ground. And so they're maybe haven't chosen anyone to lead this. And it can be really awkward that to stand there when nobody knows what to say or do, and there is nobody to step in and do it, or to lead, or when it's, the adult child of the person who's died, who's taking this on. I've often felt like, no, this is where there needs to be a third party. And I haven't felt comfortable as a funeral director. That's not really my role. Maybe I start to get something in my pocket that I can pull out in those kind of situations where everybody's kind of looking at each other, not sure what to do. But the other is with MAID. Immediately following the provision, and everyone is standing there, And we've all been anticipating it. Like there's been so much anticipation, and we've watched this person die in front of our eyes. And then what? And so I think that's that next step of planning with the family, or even just having that courage to initiate, like you said, maybe that's joining hands around the the bed, maybe that's putting on a song, maybe that's doing some sort of a ritual motion or something. But that's where I'm starting to see these glimpses of where there is a bit of a like a gap, like the net. There's like a hole in the net. I think it's ritual. I think it's sacredness.
That the hole in the net. That's where there's work to be done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Karla, for sharing your stories. If there was one thing you would like the dying and their people to know, what would it be?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think that dying is a part of the human experience. It's not something that we can avoid, and that it's not the opposite of life. Death is not the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth, the two bookends of our life. And there's so many great analogies between death and birth, and laboring into this world and laboring out of this world. When you think of like birth from the perspective of the baby, darkness, pressure, uncertainty, but the body knows what to do. And there's a power outside of us that knows what to do. I think I think we can't plan our way to a good death. There are bad deaths. There are deaths that come too soon with lots of pain and fear. But I think that kind of coming back to the beginning here of like normalizing the conversation, having the conversation, I think that builds resiliency. And that's all we can hope for, is to at least be able to show up in a brave way.
I love that this is coming from you, the planner, honestly, because I think there's often this illusion that if you get your binder done and check all your boxes, and then, you've done your work and you'll be fine. And of course, that's not the way things are. And there is so much we know and can plan for and should plan for. But there's so much we don't know, and honoring the mystery and honoring that bodies are designed to die. They just know how to die. And I'm surprised that's coming from Karla the planner, but it makes me love it even more. Oh, okay, Karla, if like just like dream with me for a moment. If you're looking to like the horizon, what's on the horizon as far as community death care, what do you think is needed? How do you think we can meet death with more acceptance, more grace?
Well, I think it comes back to community, which is really what we started talking about. And I think kind of like the inspiration of your project here, Tracy, of community and networking people and reminding people what they're able to do. Um, Something you said at the beginning about 95% of caregiving at the end of life will be family and friends. Like, we need all hands on deck. We need to be able to support each other. When I think about the rising tide of the largest generation of the 20th century reaching their dying time, the baby boomers have redefined every life stage so far, right? The toy industry literally boomed when with the boomers. Like, they challenged culture in the 60s and 70s. They wrote their own wedding vows and brought back midwifery. They came of age with the women's movement, women working outside the home, being financially independent, even divorce becoming legal. They are redefining aging and grandparenting. I mean, my mom is so much more of an active and involved grandmother than my grandmother was. And I know that to be true for a lot of my friends. They will and are redefining death and dying. And we see living funerals as a thing for kind of like the first time ever. And they're accessing medical assistance in dying, which is also new. So the baby boomers birthed the current largest generation, which is the millennials. And this is a generation that values collaboration, transparency, networking, environmental awareness, flexibility, convenience. Like these are things that are important to me, personalization. And these are things that inform how I show up for my clients. We are reaching our sandwich years, caring for aging parents, raising our own kids. We will be the ones in charge of making our parents' funeral arranging. So what I hope for as I move into this time, as I watch my peers move into this time, and we figure out how we're going to cope with this large amount of people dying, is exactly what you're doing here, is community, is building nets and networks, and realizing that at a time in the world where it feels so polarized, it feels so like you've got to be on one side or the other of an issue, like there's more that pulls us apart than brings us together. Like death happens to everyone. And I hope that, like, I hope that we can find community in this, because I'm kind of like not willing to keep this to buy into the narrative of being so separate, of the separateness that we're in right now. I want to focus on how we can connect. And like, as far as death, like, yes, I have seen death bring out the worst in families for sure, but I have more often seen death bring out the best. I have seen, I have seen more compassion, more I love yous, I appreciate you, thank you. Like death shocks us into the here and now. And as a funeral director, yes, I see all sorts. I see all sorts of families and I see all sorts of reactions, but I do see a lot of good, and I see a lot of of it bringing up what's really important. So I think there will be more of that, and I hope we can meet it with community. And I think it's just so needed. We just need that as a medicine.
Thank you so much, Karla. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for your practical, heart-centered approach. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your work, your stories. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tracy. It's always a joy to talk to you. I really appreciate you inviting me.
I do have one a last thing. I would like to invite you, a little closing ritual. I have this deck of gratitude cards by the School of Life. And when we talk about death and grief, it can be a bit heavy and dark. So gratitude is a nice balance to this conversation that we've just had. So I would like to pull a card and we can be inspired by gratitude. Just gonna shuffle them here. I got they're tiny, they're so cute. I'll pull a gratitude card. The image on the back is an ancient looking image, all these old family pictures. And it says, parents keep on loving us, even if we largely ignore them for a few years. Something to be grateful for, the love of parents.
Isn't that the truth? I remember when my first son was born, I was like, whoa, my parents love me more than I love them. Like it was just this awareness once he was born. I'm like, this new amount of love came into me that I was like, whoa, I love this thing more than anything else, and more than I love anybody. So therefore my parents must love me more than I love them.
Truth. Thank you so much, Karla. I look forward to seeing you again. And yeah, until then,
Thank you so
bye.
much, Tracy.
Yeah, bye for now.